Imagine if I came up to you and asked you, hey, Kai, will you do me a favor? Will you write me a persuasive essay, like within the next couple of weeks? Would you be down to do that for me, Kai? Would you do that for me? You wouldn't?
No.
If I asked you as a favor, you'd do it, right? Yeah, thank you. Would you be happy to do it? Would you be like excited to do it?
No.
Yeah, well, why would you? You're not an English teacher, right? You're not, and you haven't taught. Do you get what you get why I start you off with that scenario, that hypothetical scenario? The letter of rec process is something that most of you will begin engaging with over the next several months. And I put this together to give you an idea of what the etiquette is, or the etiquette I expect, and what most teachers expect, hopefully to make it as stress-free for yourself and for the teachers, okay? So as I'm recording this because I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel for other people to watch. If you have questions along the way, feel free to put those in the chat, please, or to unmute and let me know. So here we go. Why even go over this? Because teachers write a lot of letters of rec. Most teachers, it's weird. I wrote, how many letters of rec do you think I wrote this fall? I think I've said it before. Did I put a number on it? You don't remember?
Probably a lot.
Yeah, the ballpark, 60. Well, Pranavia, I did not write 60. I wrote 40. 60 probably would have broken me. If I'd written 60 letters of rec, that literally would have been writing for 10% of the graduating class. I didn't hit that number, but I wrote 40. And Sagowski, I think, was close to 30 by the time it was over. And as English teachers, it's kind of, we get asked a lot. But for the most part, I am happy to do it. But you just got to be conscious that, as I note in this slide, as a public school teacher, it does not say I'm contractually obligated to write letters of rec. Unlike a guidance counselor or unlike a private school teacher, it's not part of our job description. It's additional work. So that's why if you find that teachers are prickly about the issue or demanding or kind of you can be prickly, for lack of a better word, it's because of that, right? And the thing is, I believe that most teenagers who are going through this process, they want to do the right thing and they want to make it as easy for the teacher as possible. Nobody wants to seem like they're being entitled or condescending or lazy or whatever. We just don't know how to act sometimes. And I was there before. I still am there at moments. But as long as you know what's expected, most of y'all can follow through with that. So that's the purpose of this lesson. So the first part, when should you ask? And the answer is now. Like before school lets out. This week, this time frame is a great time to do it, especially if it's a teacher you've had this year. And if you're planning on asking a teacher you had last year, you definitely don't want to give them another summer to forget you. You know what I mean? Like, because right now you've experienced the class and you're like, hey, we've had some good times, haven't we? How about writing me a letter of rec in the fall? You put it in their ear. And if the teacher is somebody who likes to get things out of the way, like me, they can accomplish that over the summer. If you ask midsummer, a lot of teachers don't check their emails over the summer, so they might not see it. And imagine your little email getting buried in 200 other spam and work emails and so on and so forth. And this one little like, oh, if you write me a letter, it won't get seen probably. And if you ask at the beginning of the school year in the fall, a lot of teachers are very stressed at that time. And a lot of students will be forgetful about the letter of rec process, and they'll be coming to their teachers in August and September. If you ask now, you don't have to, and especially, and I'll show you how to write the letter and how to ask. If you just get it in their head that they're going to be writing it for you right now, it's going to save everyone a little bit of stress, in my experience. Okay, questions about that? No? All right, here we go. Who should you ask? You want to figure out who can speak about how you enhance the class. Whereas think about the classes where you excel, where you have meaningfully raised the level of the experience for everyone else. That should be meaningfully. Let me fix that. Lord, all right, mercy. You're brainstorming, you're thinking. True or false? You shouldn't ask an online teacher to write you a letter of rec? True or false? Online teachers aren't qualified to write you a letter of rec. What do you think? But yeah, I'd agree. It's false. Some online teachers, we got to qualify. It's like, are there some classes where you didn't participate? You didn't really enhance the class at all? I'm sure for all of us, there were classes where you didn't enjoy the experience and you might have gotten a good grade, but the teacher, that's really all they would be able to write about. This student got a good grade in my class. They're smart. I guess they're smart. I don't even know that. They could have cheated on everything for all I know. The end. That wouldn't make a good letter of rec. A good letter of rec should come from a teacher who can talk about how you enhance the class with your participation. Okay. And if you think you did that in an online class, no reason not to ask that teacher for a letter of rec. Make sense? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. How and where you should ask. Ask in person if possible. If you're asking during Google Meet, I would recommend you turn on your camera to ask them, okay? If you have to email, make it, as I say, one hell of an email. And I'm going to give you some examples of what that would look like. No matter the medium, the way you should ask should convey respect, both for the teacher and the time they will spend crafting your letter. Can I tell you a slightly awkward story about the most awkward time I was ever asked for a letter of recommendation? Can I tell you that? It's slightly awkward, but I feel like we've earned this time, this rapport with each other. It was between classes. I'm on the 2500 hallway, between classes. I go to the men's room down there. I'm in the bathroom. Johnny Chu saddles up next to me. He's like, "Hey, Mr. Scott, you want to write me a letter of recommendation?" I'm like, "Johnny, what are you doing? What? How would you think this is appropriate?" Did I write Johnny a letter of rec? Yeah, I did. But when I think of Johnny Chu, that's what I think of, him accosting me in the men's room between classes to ask for a letter of rec. That's not an appropriate time. Y'all know that, though. I still, it's a funny story. So thank you for letting me share that with you. It's all about context, right? In this class, we talk about the context of a speech. Asking is the ask, the process of asking for a letter of rec, is that not rhetorical? Yeah, it is. It is. You want something from that person. You want a letter of rec. So make correct choices in achieving that. And thinking about the context matters. Somebody talked about showing up at the teacher's house to ask. Now, I don't recommend that. I think I had put out like, what are some inappropriate ways to ask a teacher? And yeah, if you see them at the store, like I know some teachers live in this area, don't bother them while they're living their civilian life. I wouldn't do that. I don't know. Any other bad ways of asking for a letter of rec? Y'all, I think y'all kind of get the idea. Most of you will probably do the either email or in person, if you're able to do it in person. So no questions about that? All right. What to say if you have to write an email. Explain why you want this teacher to write you a letter of rec, and then provide deadlines for your applications. And again, that just shows attentiveness to their time, and it shows a sort of awareness about your own situation, especially if you're doing early action. And I know so many of you will have some early action applications. Those deadlines are generally when, like end of October, early November. I think a lot of schools have different specifics, but if your deadline is mid-fall, you should definitely be asking your teachers now, so that you're not, if you make the pitch to them with only a month to go, you're not setting them up to write you a thoughtful letter. Because, hold on. All right, what are you asking from you? Would you do that after they confirm they will write it for you, or would you do it in the same email where you ask them? I think it's fine to qualify it with, if you say yes, here are the dates of the colleges I'm applying to. You don't have to like write the email with the assumption that they will say yes. I think that's appropriate. Does that make sense, Pranavya? Will we get to see what they say? Angelina, no. Naviance is where we submit our letters of rec, and you have to waive your ability to see the letter of rec in order to like play ball in Naviance. Well, oh, you don't see, Angelina. Makes sense. However, you could lobby your teacher to see your letter of rec, and they might provide it for you. I will not do that though. I don't show my students the letter of rec I write, mostly because I think it's weird that you'd want to see your letter of rec. Like, who really wants to see it? I love getting like nice notes from students, but it does, to a certain extent, really weird me out to read like positive things about myself. I'm much more comfortable reading constructive or even just straight up negative criticism, because I'm like, I agree with all this. I am a very flawed person. But I just, and here's the reason why Naviance does not let you see the letter of rec. It's not because somebody was like, well, I want to make sure the teacher's saying good things about me. Well, yeah, they're going to, if they agree, they're agreeing because they're going to write good things about you. And I have told students that I wouldn't write them letters of rec for, if I catch a student cheating, I generally tell them I'm not going to write them a letter of rec, because there's a lot of things I would be lying about if I said them. You know what I mean? But that's really the only reason I've ever denied a student. But the reason they don't show it to you on Naviance, the letter of rec, is because, don't you know, none of y'all are micromanagers. I know that. Y'all are all just really chill and laid back. But we all know the micromanagers in our life who, if they saw the letter of rec the teacher wrote, they'd be like, oh, but they're not mentioning this, and they could mention this, and they could phrase this a little better, right? Wouldn't they like try to micromanage the letter of rec? And indeed, some teachers I've heard will actually tell the student to write the letter of rec themselves, and then they just kind of sign their name to it, which I'm not a fan of. I think that's kind of, and I love y'all, and y'all have become really good writers, but I still think I could do a better job than y'all could writing a letter of rec about you. So you get what, does that all make sense for why they don't show it to you, and why I personally don't share mine with my students? The only time I've ever shared one, I shared excerpts with my TA last year, because she gave me a year of very dedicated service as my TA, and in my like nice little letter to her, I included some excerpts of the letter of rec I wrote her. But yeah, that's how the process works. So if you're going to email, here's a good but not great example. Hello, Mr. Scott. All right, so we're already missing a direct address comma. I'm already like, well, have fun at Nova, kid. How have you been doing? I hope your summer has been going okay and everyone is staying safe. I had just started preparing for my college applications and was wondering if you'd be willing to write me a letter of application for me. Missing a question mark there. That would have been helpful. It would be great if you were willing to, because you're one of the very few teachers that I've both taken a high-level course with, as well as done voluntary work for, when the forensics and debate event had been held at John Champ last school year. Now, I chuckled at this because he's not even saying he enjoyed my class or liked me as a teacher. He's just saying, like, I took your class and you're a high-level teacher. Which, do you have to bow down at the floor of the teacher and say, you have changed? It is not often a teacher changes my life, but your class is, no, you don't have to make up stuff like that. And indeed, I'm not criticizing the kid for not complimenting me enough. I am saying he wasn't very attentive with some of his grammar choices, and that just shows a carelessness that kind of put me off a little bit. I would understand if you're too busy writing a recommendation for me, since I know this time of year is very busy, especially with the escalating COVID situation, but it would be greatly appreciated if you could take the time to write a good recommendation letter for me. And notice he says, oh, good. He's like, I don't want your B game, Mr. Scott. I don't want your C. I want your A game for my letter of rec. So a fun, weird email from this kid who I did write a letter of rec for. And he really kind of brought it home at the end, where he kind of acknowledges the circumstances and respectfully asks. That was good, but not great. Here's a better one. Still missing the direct address comma. That's okay. Would you be willing to write me a letter of rec, having had you as an English teacher? I have seen how you go about it. So it compliments me as a teacher, but then talks about how I know him very well because I taught this student for 2 years. And I feel that having taught me for so long, you would be able to accurately portray my strengths in the classroom. Please let me know if you'd be willing to help me. I think that's makes some good appeals, pretty tightly thought out. Notice it's not that long. Here's very good. The care in this email shows respect to me and my time. So this student is dodges even the whole direct address comma issue by just starting out, Mr. Scott, hope you're doing well. I was wondering if you'd be interested in writing my recommendation letter for college. Explains why I'd be the best, and then provides me lots of information about the schools, the classes she has taken and the schools she plans to apply to. And then starts to give deadlines as well. Okay. Now it just shows a respect for the process that I'm going through and respect for my time to give that detail and care and asking in a letter. Make sense? And I know you hear that word respect so much from your parents and your coaches, and you're like, Jesus, just get off me with this whole respect thing. But man, in this situation, it does matter a lot. Like I've said, we do this outside of our contract hours a lot of times. So if we feel like a student is just taking it for granted or being playing fast and loose with our time, we're probably not going to want to write a letter of rec, or we're not going to put, I'm not going to give my A game in the letter I write. So speaking of pitfalls to avoid, Naviance. Y'all are familiar with what Naviance is, right? So it's possible to just request anybody in Naviance for a letter of rec. And some students make the very crucial tactical error of just putting in the request, but not formally asking the teacher. And then because there is a place in Naviance where you can put some nice words to the teacher in it, but the teacher doesn't see that immediately. Indeed, I didn't even realize that was there until this year. And I've been writing letters of recs here for 3-4 years. So what I'm getting at is you need to ask either in person or in email and get their confirmation before you put the request in Naviance. And I have a slide at the end here that shows you what the request process looks like in Naviance, because I know y'all aren't probably that familiar with it. So do not send emails after putting the request in for Naviance if you haven't actually asked the teacher in person. Okay. Because, and as I say in this paragraph, it's very presumptuous to do that. If I have a spreadsheet with 22 letters and all of a sudden I'm being told that I have 2 extra ones, I'm pretty even tempered, but that can cause me to lose my temper a little bit and fire off some pretty emotionally charged emails. Also, there's so much this email gets wrong. Let's savor this aspect of it. This student CC'd the people who were writing her a letter of rec as well as her counselor. Why is it very rude to CC your people who are doing all this? And you know what? You might not realize it's rude. So let's contemplate that for a sec. Yeah, it's not valuing their time. And it's making you seem like, it's like, God knows some of y'all probably live in a mansion with a bunch of servants, and it's like, fetch me this and fetch me that, but do not treat your teachers like that, right? Like, not appropriate. If they're doing you a favor of writing you a letter to get you into a university, I was advised to remind everyone that I'm requesting. And this kid is a mostly good student, but she really dropped the ball with that email, and in doing that. So it doesn't take that long to copy and paste the content of an email and say, hi, Mr. Scott, hi, Ms. Schutz, hi, and send it to them individually. Make sense? It's such a petty little thing, but for some people like me, it matters. It matters a lot. And I think I'm kind of in the center of the bell curve on the pettiness scale. I think there are teachers who get a lot more offended by even the slightest little perceived, the sense of entitlement on the student's part. Okay, makes sense? Is this helpful? It's just a portrait into the neuroses of teachers. What makes them angry. If a student sends you a request through Naviance, are you required to send a letter? Oh, no, we're not, Angelina. And indeed, Ms. Sagowski, and I've done it before, we'll just sit there and ignore it. And Sagowski ignores it until the student, and I've done that before. You just ignore it until the student's like, why haven't you submitted? I'm like, because you didn't ask me. Why would you think I would do it? We're not legally bound to do any of this. So yeah, does that answer your question? The answer is no. Yeah, Angelina, go into Naviance and request like Principal Tyson to write your letter of rec and see what happens. See if he writes you one. It ain't gonna happen. Yeah, my first year here, I had tons of my seniors requesting letters of rec, and I barely knew them. I was like, why are you doing this? You didn't even ask me. Okay, important info to provide. So, Pranami's got a question. For Naviance, if you aren't sure exactly which colleges you want to go to, can you wait until after you decide to formally request on Naviance and just send an email? Yeah, of course, Pranavia. I would just have a ballpark idea of if you're going to do early decision for any of those colleges, okay? And if you know when the deadline is for early decision, just be aware of that, because in Naviance, I don't have to submit for every single college. I just submit my letter of rec, and it tacks it on to all of your applications. So it's not that big of a deal. I don't have to know explicitly all the colleges you plan to apply for. We just kind of want an idea of what the time frame is going to be. Because if you don't have applications due until like the end of January, like regular decision is, then I might save your letter of rec for winter break or whenever, or Thanksgiving break, and I might prioritize some of the ones that are early decision because I want to make sure I get them done at the right time. Okay, so my survey, when students ask for a letter of rec, is just 3 questions, apart from their name, obviously. I asked for the earliest college application deadline, and then I want 3 specific moments when they stood out in the class that don't have to do with getting a good grade. That's more about behaviors, action. And this ties back to what we were talking about last week. It's like, as a person, you're defined by your actions. And while taking tests and so on and so forth is an action, the other stuff, the interpersonal stuff, is more relevant to a college. Why is that? Why is that more relevant to a college in a teacher's application? Why do they want to hear about what you're like in the classroom? It shows character. Yeah, you're right, Bethany. It can show positive character or it can show negative character. If I write my letter of rec and I'm like, yeah, I remember how quiet he sat in class and never participated. Or are there people who are very smart? I mean, it's like we said, you could have a standout grade in a class, but you don't participate. And therefore, in your interaction, never raised the experience in the class. So what's the teacher going to say about you? You know what happens is the teacher starts talking about what a great kid you are outside of the classroom. But a college already knows that because you're going to provide them with a resume, and your counselor is probably going to write you a letter of rec talking about all the other junk you do outside of my classroom. So I'm really not going to talk about it at all. And if I mention it, it might be in the conclusion or intro of my letter of rec about you. Does that make sense? I'm going to focus about how you changed my class with your actions and what you did, okay? Exactly, Pranavia. They already know your grades, as I say in this, and so I'm just repeating stuff they already know. If I'm like, I remember that time they got a 6 out of 6 on a timed write. Boy, that was good. And they got an A+ in the class. I'll tell you what, standout kid. Doesn't tell them anything about what they're going to add to the campus experience and whether they're just going to be another, you know, I can see that. I've never been a college admissions officer, but you can imagine the thought process. They got this kid with a standout GPA, and they've got the good extracurriculars, but they're like, is this kid a weirdo? Is this kid going to be like some antisocial? Like, is he not going to blend in well with the crowd here? They need confirmation of that from the teachers. Like, this kid wrote a letter, or his personal letters about mazes and creating mazes. Remember that kid? I'll bet his teacher worked overtime creating one. It's like, look, he's kind of eccentric, but he's a really cool, like, interesting kid. No, it doesn't matter, Amon. If you go to the academies, yeah, of course you could get a letter of rec from them. You can get it from a coach, I think, or I don't know. I'm just kind of speaking from the teacher perspective here at Champ, okay? And honestly, Amon, perhaps there are colleges who will be like, we need a letter of rec from a teacher at your school. It differs. Some colleges require 3 letters of rec. Some only require 1. So it's definitely just, you know, it varies by institutions. So I did a blog post about letter of rec writing, if you want to click on the link and read my blog post. But I don't know, everything I'm talking about here, we already have discussed. The letter of rec should be about you as a human being and as a person and what you add, and your cleverness and your kindness and your thoughtfulness and your ability to raise the experience of the class, what the class is like when you're not there and what the class is like when you are there. And that's coming from the horse's mouth, from a college admissions officer, okay? So when I ask for at least 3 ways you stood out, I want that to be strong, specific evidence, because my essay is also persuasive. I'm providing evidence as well. That's also why I asked for a writing sample, because I want to be able to quote maybe some of your writing voice to just show off some of the brilliant things you wrote in my class. Okay, gentle reminders. I put that in quotation marks because I've gotten a lot of emails that mention like, oh, this is just a gentle reminder. And there's nothing gentle about it. They're like, where's my letter of rec? Why does Navient say you haven't submitted it? And I understand your life, the course of your life depends on all this falling in place. So I empathize with that stress. However, there is the correct time to start sending a gentle reminder would be 2 to 3 weeks before your application is due. Don't start sending those gentle reminders a month in advance, because that makes you look real, it makes it look like you don't trust the teacher to get it done, right? You need a gentle reminder to do this because you're an incompetent teacher, and I don't trust you, right? You don't want to give that impression to the teacher, so don't do that. Don't nag them. All right, do I have to speak more on that? I should have pulled one of my gentle reminder emails. Show that to you. All right, thank yous and the follow-up. When the holidays roll around, it's appropriate to send your letter writer a thank you note. Gifts are optional. The thoughtful letter is not, because we do have the ability to withdraw letters of rec. And don't tempt me. I was tempted to withdraw a letter of rec this school year because I wrote it for a student, and then the character he showed in my class, I was doing it for him as a favor in the first place. And I was just so put off by some of like the ideas he expressed and the way he was treating people. And then he said he got into X institution, and I was like, really? You got in there? And then it turned out he was lying about that. So I was like, I don't feel as bad. I'm not going to withdraw my letter of rec. He can go to that school instead. But you get what I'm saying. Just because we submit it doesn't mean we cannot email admissions and say, hey, I would like to withdraw this letter of rec. Now, would I do that if somebody didn't send me a thoughtful thank you note during the holidays? No. Do I note in the back of my mind who does and who doesn't? A little bit, because it shows a little thoughtfulness, a little care. Did I do that when I was in high school? No, I didn't. Did I know that was appropriate? I don't think so. I don't think anybody sat me down and explained this process. So you're being told now, okay? So no one ever sat me down and told me. I asked one teacher, and I remember she wrote it and printed it out and gave it to me. She didn't even like seal it or anything. I read like one sentence of it, and I felt like my eyes were going to burn. Like, it was so horrible reading like any complimentary things about me. It was the worst thing in the world. But you get what I'm saying. You should give some sort of thanks. That doesn't mean a gift. If you know the teacher collects a certain thing, but the Starbucks gift cards, and some teachers like Starbucks gift cards and all that junk, but like somebody gave me like a $10 Chili's gift card. I'm like, I would like, what do you even buy for $10? I've never been to a Chili's in forever. But it's like, sometimes the gift is almost insulting. You know what I mean? But Iman, there's no thought that goes into a $10 Chili's gift card. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm a snob. I guess I am. But like, if you write a thoughtful letter, that means much more than a card with one sentence like, thank you for doing this. Here's a $10 Chili's gift card. It's like, well, you expect me to eat by myself at Chili's and get like not even an appetizer or something? You get what I'm saying? Like, and again, Iman, this is just the portrait into a neurotic teacher's mind. But I'm telling you right now, if most teachers, the vast majority of teachers, would appreciate a thoughtful note. I keep the thoughtful notes that are written to me throughout the years, and I'm so blessed that I get a good amount of them. If I get something that's just a card with a few like sentences scribbled on it, you think I'm gonna waste my time putting it in that bag? No. So it's the thought. Again, this circles back to what we've been talking about since the very beginning of this class. It's about ideas and intellectual effort that you put into something. Okay, and maybe that's because I teach this class because I'm an English teacher. I hold a higher standard to those things. Okay, that's my sermon about gift giving and letter writing. And then once you find out where you're going, you got to tell your teacher where you're going. Like, why would you not do that? I saw a guy the other day. He finally stopped by to say hi. And I was like, why did you never let me know when you got into this great school? And I was like, I don't know. I talked to my fourth block. They're always like, we're trash. I hate myself. I'm not good. Why would anybody care? It's like, yeah, we care. We wouldn't be writing this letter for you if we didn't care about you, right? So thus, we want to know what's happening. And again, you'll never find out the extent to which the teacher's letter got you into a college, the extent to which your application or your essay you wrote got you into a college. The colleges don't release that to you. They never explain the debate or how, whether you were a slam dunk to be admitted or whether it was a tight, well, I guess if you get deferred and then admitted, I guess that proves that you were on the bubble or whatever. But you get what I'm saying? So we want to know because we feel in some ways like we help contribute to your success. So please tell the teacher when you find out. Okay? Oh, and if a teacher says he or she will write you your letter, but then you find someone quote unquote better. I've told you about that experience, right? No? I didn't tell you all about this. It was a couple of years ago. I've had multiple students one year. I had already written their letters of rec and I was ready to submit it in Naviance because I was so on top of things. And then it just never came in. And I saw them in like November and I asked them, I was like, hey, so why? And I found someone better. And I was like, oof, man, that one hit hard. I'm being more restrained than I was in fourth block. I talked about how angry I was in fourth. So the point is, if that experience happens, no big deal. Well, yeah, imagine if Angelina actually, the Principal Tyson's like, yeah, sure, Angelina, I'm going to write you a letter of rec. And Angelina's like, well, I need to tell Mr. Scott because he had initially agreed, but now I don't need him because he sucks in comparison. So, right? You just let the teacher know, hey, I no longer need your letter of rec. I apologize for. See, that's the funny thing. No, why would we be upset? Do you think, Pranavya, I'm going to be upset that I don't get the privilege of crafting a letter of rec about you? It just takes one off my to-do list. Does that make sense? Like I would enjoy writing a letter of rec for most of my students, but like being told I only have to write 29 now as opposed to 30, that just to me is like, all right, that's a little less work. That's fine. Good for that student for finding someone. It's just, you just got to tell the person immediately so that they don't start writing it and do that effort and then they can't do anything with it. Will we be using the same letter of rec for? No, you get to pick and choose, and there's no maximum of letters of rec. But remember, I wouldn't ask anybody that you're not planning on using for a college application, Bethany, because we can see if our letter is being requested for schools. Okay. So Pranavya, yeah, I wouldn't say I found someone better. You would just say, I asked another teacher who has had me a long time, and I wasn't sure if they were going to say yes, but now they agree. And I think their letter describes me at my best slightly more than you. You know what I mean? I trust all of you to be able to do it in a diplomatic way. But believe me, when the act of telling them you don't have to write me a letter of recommendation anymore is ultimately not going to hurt anybody's feelings. Because again, like all of you are good at writing like essays for my class. Like y'all have worked really hard to do that. But if I told you I'm not going to make you do a timed write, y'all wouldn't be like disappointed, would you? Like you'd be like, oh, thank God, I don't have to do that. Okay, so we've gone over that, the key piece of etiquette. So here's what Naviance looks like on your phone. I asked some of my seniors to give me some screenshots because the process is as follows. Let me pull it up. What did she say? You click on colleges, scroll down and press letters of rec, and the last image should pop up where you can submit your letters of rec. So Shahid sent me something similar. Home, colleges, apply to colleges, letters of rec. Does somebody want to, I'm going to actually add some formatting in this, some text over it. Does anybody want to go into Naviance and see if they can already like kind of interact with that interface? Apply to college. I'll give it like an orange background. What color is, where's orange? Is that orange? All right. Ooh, that's looking nice. I could be like the yearbook teacher. Like I get graphic design, you know. All right, did anybody check it on Naviance? Like, is it there? Kai, you checking? All right. And as you can see on Maddie's, Clemson needed 2 requested from myself, and she requested 1 from myself and Belzer, and we both submitted it. It looks like she decided not to apply to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. 2 allowed, 2 requested. Oh, 0 or none required. But see, that's so weird. You go to home, you click on colleges, you click on apply to colleges, and then you click on letters of rec. What does that help for Navia, or do you mean how to just get to Naviance in the first place? Naviance should be in LCPS Go. All right. Cool. Okay, that's the end. Any other questions about this experience that I can help you with about the college or about the letter of rec solicitation process? I think I've given you a lot of resources here, so hopefully it'll be relatively stress-free for yourself and for whomever you decide to ask. And hopefully the tone of this lesson hasn't made it seem like I don't want to write you a letter of rec. You know what I mean? Like it has it seemed like that, Kai? Okay. I just was thinking a lot about how a lot of the frustrations we encounter are a result of just students not understanding what the protocol is a lot of times. So that's the only thing. If you think I'd write you a good letter of rec, just speak to me about it, either here in class or send me an email, so on and so forth. Or yeah, if you showed up to my house in Winchester to ask me, I would truly be disturbed. I'd be like, how did you find me? How did you get out? What if you don't know where you're applying yet? Yeah. So Lila, you don't even know if you're going to do like an early decision to any of these schools?
I mean, like, to be honest, like, I don't know, like, what's the difference other than like, is there an advantage with early decision?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I was planning on, like, after this, I was like, oh, I should probably figure out, like, what's the difference? Like, what do I gain from doing it earlier or later, you know, like.
I believe early decision is binding, where if they admit you for early decision, you have to go there. I think that's what it is. But
Oh, really?
I don't know. Some of y'all know. Some of y'all have got to know the answer to this.
I don't know. I could ask around, but.
Early action is non-binding, and the deadlines are the same. So what's binding then? Isn't there one where if you get accepted, you have to go there?
Early decision's binding.
Oh.
Action's non-binding.
So there's early decision and early action.
I didn't know there was 2. I just thought that was the same thing.
It's not for all the colleges. Only like some of them have both, but yeah.
Okay, so if you do early action, that's the one where it's like.
If you get accepted, you don't have to go.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, yeah. That's
Should
probably.
I include that in my notes, or are Lila and I the only people who don't know that? Early. So let's make sure we got this right. Early action is binding. Is that right? Is that right, Kai?
Early action is non-binding. Early decision is binding.
Non-binding. Early decision equals binding. I like the idea of binding. It makes you think of like literal like chains and bondage and things like that. And you will indeed be financially bound to these institutions unless you get a nice scholarship from. Yeah, Jackie. It generally is November 1st. You're right. I've seen some that are like mid-October though. Bless their hearts. Angelina asks, is it true that a letter of rec from a teacher from sophomore year isn't as good because they're not determined the current? Angelina, honestly, yeah, I'd pretty much agree with that. Unless that teacher has like really kept up with you and maybe been a coach or some sort of like life mentor to you, like, you know how people are like really close with Mr. Kim, you know, and like even when they don't have him as a teacher, they like see him and say nice things to him. I could see if you had that sort of relationship with your teacher, it might be appropriate. But if it's like, yeah, I feel like you should try to aim for somebody who has that portrait of the most current version of you. And you do put that in quotation marks, Angelina, but I think that is like kind of an accurate depiction, because don't you evolve at such a rapid pace as a high schooler, like both physically and emotionally and mentally? And the 10th grade, imagine what you were like as a sophomore. Y'all were so different. Oh, Suhani said, I like absolutely no clue on that. What do you need a lesson on, Suhani? Oh, is that the early decision stuff? Okay, yeah. Can you ask a teacher that left the school? Asked Vinavi. Yeah, sure. If you can find them. If they're teaching at another LCPS school, they should still have the same email address. If they've moved to like Fairfax or any other school system, it's going to be difficult.
No, I just had a teacher that went to Light Ridge, so I wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But again, that teacher taught you in 10th grade. So if you can think about somebody maybe as an additional letter of rec who taught you this year, who'd make a good letter writer for you, you might consider having them in there as well. And that kind of speaks to something, Angelina. If you have one letter of rec from a sophomore year teacher and the rest are from people who taught you junior year, I'd say that's fine. But if you just can submit one letter of rec for a school and it's a sophomore year teacher, I think for the most of y'all could probably do better. Suhani says, I'm so nervous for applying. I don't know the first thing. Yeah, and y'all are in a pretty precarious situation in the sense that you haven't been able to be in person and have guidance counselors go over this stuff with you. I think they've probably been disseminating this information online, right? So you may or may not have been awake for those advisory lessons or those like sessions with your counselor. So you're going to have to like lean on each other to figure out how to do this, but you'll be fine. These seniors had to do the exact same thing and they got through it. We got bumped out of school in March. So scared. Yeah, don't be scared, Suhani. It's fine. What are you scared of? That you're not going to figure out how to apply and you'll never be able to get into a school? We'll help you. People will help you figure out how to apply. The virtual meets is kind of, yeah. Yeah, I imagine those are helpful. The virtual meets the colleges did. Okay, anything else in this lesson today that I need to cover about this process? Was this helpful? Hopefully. Did we learn anything from it? Hopefully.